The Kansas City Chiefs once again found themselves connected to one of the biggest names remaining on the free agent market, but in the end, another potential offensive weapon slipped away before the organization could fully make its move. According to ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter, the Chiefs were among several teams interested in veteran wide receiver Jauan Jennings before he ultimately decided to sign a one-year contract with the Minnesota Vikings. The moment the news broke, it immediately sparked discussion across the NFL world, especially among Chiefs fans who continue waiting for Kansas City to make a significant addition at wide receiver after an extremely disappointing season that saw the franchise miss the playoffs for the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era. For years, the Chiefs had been the standard of excellence in the AFC, consistently competing for Super Bowls and dominating with one of the league's most explosive offenses. But last season changed the perception around the team. The offense no longer looked unstoppable every week, the passing game lacked consistency, injuries piled up, and eventually the dynasty that once looked untouchable suddenly appeared vulnerable. Because of that, this offseason has carried an entirely different tone compared to previous years. Instead of making luxury additions, Kansas City has been forced to aggressively reevaluate the roster and identify areas that desperately need improvement if the organization wants to get back to championship form. Wide receiver quickly became one of the biggest priorities. While the Chiefs still have talented players at the position, there are serious questions surrounding reliability, depth, health, and long-term consistency. That is exactly why the connection to Jauan Jennings immediately made so much sense. Jennings may not carry the superstar label of some of the league's elite receivers, but around NFL circles he has quietly built a strong reputation as one of the toughest and most dependable complementary receivers in football. During his years with the San Francisco 49ers, Jennings became known for doing all the small things that coaches value. He blocks aggressively in the running game, fights through contact, delivers in clutch moments, wins contested catches, and brings a level of physicality that can completely change the energy of an offense. He is the type of player who may not always dominate headlines but often becomes extremely important in meaningful games. Speaking on the Pat McAfee Show, Schefter explained that Kansas City was indeed among the teams showing interest in Jennings before he ultimately chose Minnesota. According to Schefter, the Chiefs, Washington Commanders, and Miami Dolphins all had varying levels of interest, but the Vikings were the only team Jennings actually visited before signing his contract. Schefter revealed that Jennings ended up receiving a one-year deal worth up to $13 million, including approximately $8 million in guaranteed base salary. That detail is incredibly important because it shows just how quickly the process moved once Minnesota became serious. While Kansas City clearly liked the player, Jennings never truly opened the door for an extended recruitment process with the Chiefs. Once he visited Minnesota, momentum rapidly shifted toward the Vikings, and before other interested teams could fully escalate negotiations, the deal was done. In many ways, it feels less like Kansas City lost a bidding war and more like Jennings simply found the exact opportunity he wanted before the market could fully develop around him. Still, the fact that the Chiefs were involved confirms something fans already strongly suspected: Kansas City is absolutely still searching for help at wide receiver. That should not surprise anyone following the team closely this offseason. Even after adding several pieces across the roster, the Chiefs still have unresolved questions surrounding their passing attack, especially with Patrick Mahomes recovering from one of the most serious injuries of his career. Mahomes is returning from a torn ACL and LCL suffered late in the 2025 season, and while the organization remains optimistic about his recovery timeline, there is naturally concern about whether he will immediately return to peak form. When a quarterback is coming off a devastating knee injury, surrounding him with reliable pass catchers becomes even more important. Kansas City understood that entering the offseason, which is why many expected the front office to aggressively target additional receiver talent through free agency or the draft. However, despite all the speculation, the Chiefs made only modest additions at the position. During the 2026 NFL Draft, Kansas City selected Cincinnati wide receiver Cyrus Allen in the 5th round, a player the organization believes has tremendous upside because of his route-running ability, separation skills, and versatility. Beyond Allen, though, there were no major draft investments at receiver. that left many fans convinced the Chiefs would eventually circle back to the veteran market later in the offseason, particularly once prices began to stabilize. Jennings seemed like the perfect candidate for that type of move. The fit on the field was obvious. Throughout his career, Jennings has consistently proven he can thrive in physical, high-pressure football environments. Chiefs fans know that better than most because they watched him nearly help beat Kansas City in Super Bowl 58. In that game, Jennings delivered one of the best performances of his career, catching 4 passes for 42 yards and a touchdown while also throwing a memorable 21-yard touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey on a trick play. Even though the 49ers ultimately lost, Jennings emerged from that game with his reputation elevated. He looked fearless, physical, and completely comfortable on the biggest stage imaginable. That kind of performance is exactly why teams around the league value him so highly. Jennings is not simply a depth receiver. He is an emotional tone-setter who brings toughness and reliability to an offense. For Kansas City, that type of player carried obvious appeal. The Chiefs have explosive players like Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton, but what the offense often lacked last season was consistency underneath and physicality after the catch outside of Rashee Rice. Jennings could have provided exactly that. His ability to work the middle of the field, absorb contact, convert difficult third downs, and create yards through physicality would have added another important dimension to Andy Reid's offense. He also could have become an incredibly valuable security blanket for either Mahomes or Justin Fields, especially if Fields is forced to start early in the season while Mahomes continues recovering. But despite the fit, there were always major obstacles preventing this from becoming a likely deal. The first issue is schematic overlap. Jennings is an excellent player, but his role mirrors several receivers Kansas City already has. Rashee Rice and Jalen Royals already occupy similar areas within the offense, functioning primarily as physical slot-style receivers who excel after the catch and win through toughness rather than pure vertical explosiveness. While having multiple players with similar skill sets is not necessarily a bad thing, it can create roster balance concerns. Kansas City already has numerous offensive mouths to feed. Between Travis Kelce, Rice, Worthy, Thornton, Kenneth Walker, and potentially Fields' rushing involvement, there are only so many touches available within the offense. Jennings may not have viewed Kansas City as the ideal situation to maximize his production heading into another future free agency opportunity. Minnesota offered something far more attractive in that regard, a clearly defined role with substantial target potential. For a player on a one-year prove-it deal, opportunity matters tremendously. The second major obstacle was financial flexibility. Kansas City's salary cap situation remains extremely complicated because of the realities that come with building around a superstar quarterback contract. The Chiefs already have massive financial commitments across the roster, and reports indicate the organization still needs additional cap maneuvering simply to finalize its rookie class signings. Minnesota's reported offer of up to $13 million was relatively straightforward for the Vikings to absorb. For Kansas City, however, that contract likely would have required far more creativity, restructuring, and long-term planning. That financial reality probably made it difficult for Brett Veach and the front office to justify aggressively pursuing Jennings at that number, especially given the overlap concerns at his position. But perhaps the most interesting part of this entire situation is what it could mean for Rashee Rice moving forward. Internally, there still appears to be significant belief in Rice's long-term future with the organization. Whenever he has been healthy and focused, Rice has looked like one of the Chiefs' most promising offensive weapons. His physicality, toughness, and yards after catch ability fit perfectly within Andy Reid's offensive philosophy. The problem has never been talent. The problem has been availability and consistency. Rice has battled injuries while also dealing with off-field concerns that created uncertainty around his future. But despite all of that, the Chiefs still seem willing to bet on his upside rather than immediately replacing his role with a veteran like Jennings. Passing on Jennings could actually signal confidence in Rice's ability to become a long-term foundational piece of the offense. Because if Kansas City truly believed Rice was no longer part of the future, aggressively pursuing Jennings would have made far more sense. Instead, the organization appears willing to give Rice another opportunity to prove he deserves a second contract. And honestly, the opportunity is sitting right in front of him. If Rice can stay healthy throughout the 2026 season, avoid off-field distractions, and produce consistently, he could absolutely emerge as one of Mahomes' primary weapons for years to come. A strong season would likely position him for extension discussions during the 2027 offseason. Still, the Chiefs' inability to land Jennings does leave lingering questions about the current state of the receiving corps. Kansas City has talent, but there is still uncertainty everywhere. Xavier Worthy is electrifying with the ball in his hands, but continues developing as a complete receiver. Tyquan Thornton possesses intriguing deep threat ability but has not consistently produced at a high level in the NFL. Cyrus Allen is an exciting developmental player but remains an unproven fifth-round rookie. Travis Kelce is still dangerous, but at this stage of his career, expecting him to completely carry the passing game every week is unrealistic. There are pieces in place, but there is still no definitive answer regarding who becomes the reliable veteran chain mover outside of Kelce. That is exactly why fans became so intrigued by the possibility of Jennings joining the team. He represented reliability, physicality, experience, and playoff-tested toughness. But now that opportunity is gone, and the Chiefs must continue searching for answers elsewhere. The good news for Kansas City is that the offseason is still far from finished. Brett Veach has consistently shown a willingness to remain aggressive deep into free agency, especially when it comes to identifying undervalued contributors. Andy Reid has also repeatedly demonstrated an ability to adapt offensively depending on the personnel available. There is also a realistic possibility that the Chiefs simply believe internal development will solve many of these issues. If Rashee Rice takes another leap, if Xavier Worthy becomes more polished, if Cyrus Allen develops quickly, and if Travis Kelce remains productive, the offense could absolutely return to elite form without another major addition. And of course, everything ultimately revolves around Patrick Mahomes. Because regardless of which receivers line up on Sundays, Kansas City's ceiling depends entirely on the health and brilliance of its franchise quarterback. A healthy Mahomes changes everything. He elevates receivers, creates opportunities out of chaos, and hides weaknesses better than almost any quarterback in football history. But after the struggles of last season, the Chiefs clearly understand they can no longer rely exclusively on Mahomes' magic to solve every offensive problem. That is why they explored Jennings. That is why they continue monitoring the market. And that is why this offseason has become one of the most important stretches of the entire Mahomes era. The Chiefs know the AFC continues getting stronger. They know the margin for error is shrinking. And they know that if they want to return to the top of the NFL and compete for another Lombardi trophy, they must continue surrounding their quarterback with the right balance of talent, toughness, reliability, and depth. Jauan Jennings could have helped provide that. Instead, he is heading to Minnesota, and Kansas City must continue searching for the final pieces necessary to get the dynasty fully back on track once again. Now it's your turn, Chiefs fans. Comment what you expect from the next season. What do you think of the current Chiefs team? Thanks for watching and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.